Good evening, and welcome to another part of Interview with the Vampire. In the previous episode, Louis and Claudia visited the secretive Théâtre des Vampires and encountered a mysterious group of vampires led by the intriguing figure of Armand. So let's dim the lights, cozy up, and if you are ready, then I will begin. I don't think I caught my breath until I'd reached the street. The rain was still falling, and all of the street seemed sodden and desolate in the rain, but beautiful. A few scattered bits of paper blowing in the wind, a gleaming carriage passing slowly with the thick, rhythmic clop of the horse. The sky was pale violet. I sped fast, with Claudia beside me leading the way, then finally frustrated with the length of my stride, riding in my arms. "Yeah, I don't like them," she said to me with a steel fury as we neared the Hôtel Saint-Gabriel. Even its immense, brightly lit lobby was still in the pre-dawn hour. I spirited past the sleepy clerks, the long faces at the desk. I've searched for them the world over, and I despise them. She threw off her cape and walked into the center of the room. A volley of rain hit the French windows. I found myself turning up the lights one by one and lifting the candelabrum to the gas flames as if I were Lestat or Claudia. And then, seeking the Pucci velvet chair I'd envisioned in that cellar, I slipped down into it, exhausted. It seemed for the moment as if the room blazed about me, as my eyes fixed on a gilt-framed painting of pastel trees and serene waters. The vampire spell was broken. They couldn't touch us here. And yet I knew this to be a lie, a foolish lie. "I am in danger, danger," Claudia said with that smoldering wrath. "But how can they know what we did to him? Besides, we are in danger. Do you think for a moment I don't acknowledge my own guilt? And if you were the only one?" I reached out for her now as she drew near, but her fierce eyes settled on me, and I let my hands drop back limp. "Do you think I would leave you in danger?" She was smiling. For a moment, I didn't believe my eyes. "No, you would not, Louis. You would not. Danger holds you to me. Love holds me to you," I said softly. "Love?" she mused. "What do you mean by love?" And then, as if she could see the pain in my face, she came close and put her hands on my cheek. She was cold, unsatisfied, as I was cold and unsatisfied, teased by that mortal boy, but unsatisfied. "And that you take my love for granted always," I said to her, "that we are wed." But even as I said these words, I felt my old conviction waver. I felt that torment I'd felt last night when she had taunted me about mortal passion. I turned away from her. "You would leave me for Armand if he beckoned to you?" "Never," I said to her. "You would leave me, and he wants you as you want him. He's been waiting for you." "Never." I rose now and made my way to that chest. The doors were locked, but they would not keep those vampires out. Only we could keep them out by rising as early as the light would let us. I turned to her and told her to come, and she was at my side. I wanted to bury my face in her hair. I wanted to beg her forgiveness, because in truth she was right, and yet I loved her as always. And now, as I drew her in close to me, she said, "Do you know what it was that he told me over and over without ever speaking a word? Do you know what was the kernel of the trance he put me in so my eyes could only look at him, so that he pulled me as if my heart were on a string? So you felt it, I whispered. So it was the same. He rendered me powerless, she said. I saw the image of her against those books above his desk, her limp neck, her dead hands. But what are you saying? That he spoke to you, that he... Without words, she repeated. I could see the gas lights going dim, the candle flames too solid in their stillness. The rain beat on the panes. Do you know what he said? That I should die, she whispered. That I should let you go. I shook my head, and yet in my monstrous heart I felt a surge of excitement. She spoke the truth as she believed it. There was a film in her eyes, glassy and silver. He draws life out of me into himself, she said, her lovely lips trembling so I couldn't bear it. I held her tight, but the tears stood in her eyes. Life out of the boy who was his slave. Life out of me whom he would make his slave. He loves you. He loves you. He would have you, and he would not have me stand in the way. You don't understand him. I fought it, kissing her. I wanted to shower her with kisses, her cheek, her lips. No, I understand him only too well, she whispered to my lips, even as they kissed her. It is you who don't understand him. Love's blinded you. Your fascination with his knowledge, his power. If you knew how he drinks death, you'd hate him more than you ever hated Lestat. Louis, you must never return to him. I tell you, I'm in danger. Early the next night, I left her, convinced that Armand alone among the vampires of the theater could be trusted. She let me go reluctantly, and I was troubled deeply by the expression in her eyes. Weakness was unknown to her, and yet I saw fear and something beaten even now as she let me go. And I hurried on my mission, waiting outside the theater until the last of the patrons had gone and the doormen were tending to the locks. What they thought I wasn't certain. An actor like the others, who did not take off his paint. It didn't matter. What mattered was that they let me through, and I passed them and the few vampires in the ballroom, unaccosted, to stand at last at Armand's open door. He saw me immediately, no doubt had heard my step a long way off, and he welcomed me at once and asked me to sit down. He was busy with his human boy, who was dining at the desk on a silver plate of meats and fish. A decanter of white wine stood next to him, and though he was feverish and weak from last night, his skin was florid, and his heat and fragrance were a torment to me. Not apparently to Armand, who sat in the leather chair by the fire opposite me, turned to the human, his arms folded on the leather arm. The boy filled his glass and held it up now in a salute. "My master," he said, his eyes flashing on me as he smiled, but the toast was to Armand. "Your slave," Armand whispered with a deep intake of breath that was passionate, and he watched as the boy drank deeply. I could see him savoring the wet lips, the mobile flesh of the throat, as the wine went down. And now the boy took a morsel of white meat, making that same salute, and consumed it slowly, his eyes fixed on Armand. It was as though Armand feasted upon the feast, drinking in that part of life which he could not share any longer except with his eyes. And lost though He seemed to it was calculated, not that torture I'd felt years ago when I stood outside Babette's window, longing for her human life. When the boy had finished, he knelt with his arms around Armand's neck, as if he actually savored the icy flesh, and I could remember the night Lestat first came to me, how his eyes seemed to burn, how his white face gleamed. You know what I am to you now. Finally, it was finished. He was to sleep, and Armand locked the brass gates against him, and in minutes, heavy with his meal, he was dozing, and Armand sat opposite me, his large, beautiful eyes tranquil and seemingly innocent. When I felt them pull me towards him, I dropped my eyes, wished for a fire in the grate, but there were only ashes. You told me to say nothing of my origin. Why was this? I asked, looking up at him. It was as if he could sense my holding back, yet wasn't offended, only regarding me with a slight wonder. But I was weak, too weak for his wonder, and again I looked away from him. Did you kill this vampire who made you? Is that why you are here without him? Why you won't say his name? Santiago thinks that you did. And if this is true, or if we can't convince you otherwise, you would try to destroy us, I asked. I would not try to do anything to you, he said calmly. But as I told you, I am not the leader here in the sense that you asked. Yet they believe you to be the leader, don't they? And Santiago, you shoved him away from me twice. I'm more powerful than Santiago, older. Santiago is younger than you are, he said. His voice was simple, devoid of pride. These were facts. We want no quarrel with you. It's begun, he said, but not with me, with those above. But what reason has he to suspect us? He seemed to be thinking now, his eyes cast down, his chin resting on his closed fist. After a while, which seemed interminable, he looked up. I could give you reasons, he said, that you are too silent, that the vampires of the world are a small number and live in terror of strife amongst themselves, and choose their fledglings with great care, making certain that they respect the other vampires mightily. There are 15 vampires in this house, and the number is jealously guarded, and weak vampires are feared. I should say this also, that you are flawed is obvious to them. You feel too much, you think too much. As you said yourself, vampire detachment is not of great value. As you said yourself, vampire detachment is not of great value to you. And then there's this mysterious child. A child who can never grow, never be self-sufficient. I would not make a vampire of that boy there now, if his life, which is so precious to me, were in serious danger, because he is too young, his limbs not strong enough, his mortal cup barely tasted. Yet you bring with you this child. What manner of vampire made her? They ask. Did you make her? So you see, you bring with you these flaws and this mystery, and yet you're completely silent, and so you cannot be trusted. And Santiago looks for an excuse. But there is another reason closer to the truth than all those things which I've just said to you, and that is simply this, that when you first encountered Santiago in the Latin Quarter, you, unfortunately, called him a buffoon. I sat back. It would perhaps have been better all around if you had said nothing. And he smiled to see that I understood with him the irony of this. I sat reflecting upon what he'd said, and what weighed as heavily upon me through all of it were Claudia's strange admonitions that this gentle-eyed young man had said to her, "Die," and beyond that, my slowly accumulating disgust with the vampires in the ballroom above. I felt an overwhelming desire to speak to him of these things, of her fear. No, not yet, though I couldn't believe when I looked into his eyes that he'd tried to wield this power over her. His eyes said live, his eyes said learn, and oh, how much I wanted to confide to him the breadth of what I didn't understand, how, searching all these years, I'd been astonished to discover those vampires above had made of immortality a club of fads and cheap conformity. And yet, through this sadness, this confusion, came the clear realization. Why should it be otherwise? What had I expected? What right had I to be so bitterly disappointed in Lestat that I would let him die because he wouldn't show me what I must find in myself? Armand's words, what had they been? The only power that exists is inside ourselves. Listen to me, he said now. You must stay away from them. Your face hides nothing. You would yield to me now were I to question you. Look into my eyes. I didn't do this. I fixed my eyes firmly on one of those small paintings above his desk until it ceased to be the Madonna and Child and became a harmony of line and color, because I knew what he was saying to me was true. Stop them if you will. Advise them that we don't mean any harm. Why can't you do this? You say yourself we're not your enemies, no matter what we've done. I could hear him sigh, faintly. I have stopped them for the time being, he said. But I don't want such power over them as would be necessary to stop them entirely, because if I exercise such power, then I must protect it. I will make enemies. And I would have forever to deal with my enemies, when all I want here is a certain space, a certain peace, or not to be here at all. I accept the scepter of sorts they've given me, but not to rule over them, only to keep them at a distance. I should have known, I said, my eyes still fixed on that painting. Then you must stay away. Celeste has a great deal of power, being one of the oldest, and she is jealous of the child's beauty, and Santiago, as you can see, is only waiting for a shred of proof that you're outlaws. I turned slowly and looked at him again where he sat with that eerie vampire stillness, as if he were in fact not alive at all. The moment lengthened. I heard his words just as if he were speaking them again. All I want here is a certain space, a certain peace, or not to be here at all. And I felt a longing for him so strong that it took all my strength to contain it, merely to sit there gazing at him, fighting it. I wanted it to be this way. Claudia safe amongst these vampires somehow, guilty of no crime they might ever discover from her or anyone else, so that I might be free to remain forever in this cell, as long as I could be welcome, even tolerated, allowed here on any condition whatsoever. I could see that mortal boy again, as if he were not asleep on the bed, but kneeling at Armand's side, with his arms around Armand's neck. It was an icon for me of love, the love I felt. Not physical love, you must understand. I don't speak of that at all. though Armand was beautiful and simple, and no intimacy with him would ever have been repellent. For vampires, physical love culminates and is satisfied in one thing: the kill. I speak of another kind of love which drew me to him completely, as the teacher which Lestat had never been. Knowledge would never be withheld by Armand, I knew it. It would pass through him as through a pane of glass, so that I might bask in it and absorb it and grow. I shut my eyes, and I thought I heard him speak, so faintly I wasn't certain. It seemed he said, "Do you know why I am here?" I looked up at him again, wondering if he knew my thoughts, could actually read them, if such could conceivably be the extent of that power. Now, after all these years, I could forgive Lestat for being nothing but an ordinary creature who could not show me the uses of my powers. And yet I still longed for this, could fall into it without resistance. A sadness pervaded it all, sadness for my own weakness and my own awful dilemma. Claudia waited for me, Claudia who was my daughter and my love. "What am I to do?" I whispered. "Go away from them? Go away from you? After all these years?" "They don't matter to you," he said. I smiled and nodded. "What is it you want to do?" he asked, and his voice assumed the most gentle, sympathetic tone. "Don't you know, don't you have that power?" I asked. "Can't you read my thoughts as if they were words?" He shook his head. "Not the way you mean. I only know the danger to you, and the child is real, because it's real to you. And I know your loneliness, even with her love, is almost more terrible than you can bear." I stood up then. It would seem a simple thing to do, to rise, to go to the door, to hurry quickly down that passage. And yet it took every ounce of strength, every smattering of that curious thing I've called my detachment. "I ask you to keep them away from us," I said at the door, but I couldn't look back at him, didn't even want the soft intrusion of his voice. "Don't go," he said. "I have no choice." I was in the passage when I heard him so close to me that I started. He stood beside me, eye level with my eye, and in his hand he held a key which he pressed into mine. "There is a door there," he said, gesturing to the dark end, which I'd thought to be merely a wall, "and a stairs to the side street, which no one uses but myself. Go this way now, so you can avoid the others. You are anxious, and they will see it." I turned around to go at once, though every part of my being wanted to remain there. "But let me tell you this," he said, and lightly he pressed the back of his hand against my heart. "Use the power inside you. Don't abhor it anymore. Use that power. And when they see you in the streets above, use that power to make your face a mask, and think, as you gaze on them as on anyone, beware. Take that word as if it were an amulet I'd given you to wear about your neck. And when your eyes meet Santiago's eyes, or the eyes of any other vampire, speak to them politely what you will, but think of that word, and that word only. Remember what I say. I speak to you simply because you respect what is simple. You understand this. That's your strength." I took the key from him, and I don't remember actually putting it into the lock or going up the steps, or where he was, or what he'd done, except that, as I was stepping into the dark side streets behind the theater, I heard him say very softly to me from from some place close to me. Come here to me when you can. I looked around for him, but was not surprised that I couldn't see him. He had told me also some time or other that I must not leave the Hôtel Saint-Gabriel, that I must not give the others the shred of evidence of guilt they wanted. You see, he said, killing other vampires is very exciting. That is why it is forbidden under penalty of death. And then I seemed to awake to the Paris street shining with rain, to the tall, narrow buildings on either side of me, to the fact that the door had shut to make a solid, dark wall behind me, and that Armand was no longer there. And though I knew Claudia waited for me, though I passed her in the hotel window above the gas lamps, a tiny figure standing among waxen-petaled flowers, I moved away from the boulevard, letting the darker streets swallow me, as so often the streets of New Orleans had done. It was not that I did not love her. Rather, it was that I knew I loved her only too well, that the passion for her was as great as the passion for Armand. And I fled them both now, letting the desire for the kill rise in me like a welcome fever, threatening consciousness, threatening pain. Out of the mist which had followed the rain, a man was walking towards me. I can remember him as roaming on the landscape of a dream, because the night around me was dark and unreal. The hill might have been anywhere in the world, and the soft lights of Paris were an amorphous shimmering in the fog. And sharp-eyed and drunk, he was walking blindly into the arms of death itself, his pulsing fingers reaching out to touch the very bones of my face. I was not crazed yet, not desperate. I might have said to him, "Pass by." I believe my lips did form the word Armand had given me, "Beware." Yet I let him slip his bold, drunken arm around my waist. I yielded to his adoring eyes, to the voice that begged to paint me now and spoke of warmth, to the rich, sweet smell of the oils that streaked his loose shirt. I was following him through Montmartre, and I whispered to him, "You are not a member of the dead." He was leading me through an overgrown garden, through the sweet, wet grasses, and he was laughing as I said, "Alive, alive," his hand touching my cheek, stroking my face, clasping finally my chin, as he guided me into the light of the low doorway, his reddened face brilliantly illuminated by the oil lamps, the warmth seeping about us as the door closed. I saw the great sparkling orbs of his eyes, the tiny red veins that reached for the dark centers, that warm hand burning my cold hunger as he guided me to a chair. And then all around me, I saw faces blazing, faces rising in the smoke of the lamps, in the shimmer of the burning stove, a wonderland of colors on canvases surrounding us, beneath a small, sloped roof, a blaze of beauty that pulsed and throbbed. Sit down," he said to me, those feverish hands against my chest, clasped by my hands, yet sliding away, my hunger rising in waves. And now I saw him at a distance, eyes intent, the palette in his hand, the huge canvas obscuring the arm that moved, and mindless and helpless, I sat there drifting with his paintings, drifting with those adoring eyes, letting it go on and on till Armand's eyes were gone, and Claudia was running down that stone passage with clicking heels away from me, away from me. "You are alive," I whispered. "Bones," he answered me. "Bones." And I saw them in heaps, taken from those shallow graves in New Orleans, as they are, and put in chambers behind the sepulchre, so that another can be laid in that narrow plot. I felt my eyes close. I felt my hunger become agony, my heart crying out for a living heart. And then I felt him moving forward, hands out, to right my face. That fatal step, that fatal lurch. A sigh escaped my lips. "Save yourself," I whispered to him. "Beware." And then something happened. In the moist radiance of his face, something drained the broken vessels of his fragile skin. He backed away from me, the brush falling from his hands, and I rose over him, feeling my teeth against my lip, feeling my eyes fill with the colors of his face, my ears fill with his struggling cry, my hands fill with that strong, fighting flesh, until I drew him up to me, helpless, and tore that flesh and had the blood that gave it life. "Die," I whispered when I held him loose now, his head bowed against my coat. "Die," and felt him struggle to look up at me. And again I drank, and again he fought, until at last he slipped, limp and shocked and near to death, on the floor. Yet his eyes did not close. I settled before his canvas, weak, at peace, gazing down at him, at his vague, graying eyes, my own hands florid, my skin so luxuriously warm. "I am mortal again," I whispered to him. "I am alive. With your blood I am alive." His eyes closed. I sank back against the wall, and found myself gazing at my own face. A sketch was all he'd done, a series of bold black lines that nevertheless made up my face and shoulders perfectly, and the color was already begun in dabs and splashes, the green of my eyes, the white of my cheek. But the horror of seeing my expression, for he had captured it perfectly, and there was nothing of horror in it. Those green eyes gazed at me from out of that loosely drawn shape with a mindless innocence, the expressionless wonder of that overpowering craving which he had not understood. Louis of 100 years ago, lost in listening to the sermon of the priest at Mass, lips parted and slack, hair careless, a hand curved in the lap and limp, a mortal Louis. I believe I was laughing, putting my hands to my face and laughing, so that the tears nearly rose in my eyes, and when I took my fingers down, there was the stain of the tears, tinged with mortal blood, and already there was begun in me the tingling of the monster that had killed and would kill again, who was gathering up the painting now and starting to flee with it from the small house. When suddenly, up from the floor, the man rose with an animal groan and clutched at my boot, his hands sliding off the leather. With some colossal spirit that defied me, he reached up for the painting and held fast to it with his whitening hands. "Give it back," he growled at me. "Give it back." And we held fast, the two of us, I staring at him and at my own hands that held so easily what he sought so desperately to rescue, as if he would take it to heaven or hell. I, the thing that his blood could not make human, he, the man that my evil had not overcome. And then, as if I were not myself, I tore the painting loose from him and, wrenching him up to my lips with one arm, gashed his throat in rage. Entering the rooms of the Hotel Saint Gabriel, I set the picture on the mantel above the fire and looked at it a long time. Claudia was somewhere in the rooms, and some other presence intruded, as though on one of the balconies above, a woman or a man stood near, giving off an unmistakable personal perfume. I didn't know why I had taken the picture, why I'd fought for it so that it shamed me now worse than the death, and why I still held onto it at the marble mantel, while my head bowed, my hands visibly trembling. And then, slowly, I turned my head. I wanted the rooms to take shape around me, I wanted the flowers, the velvet, the candles in their sconces, to be mortal and trivial and safe. And then, as if in a mist, I saw a woman there. She was seated calmly at that lavish table where Claudia attended to her hair, and so still she sat, so utterly without fear, her green taffeta sleeves reflected in the tilted mirrors, her skirts reflected, that she was not one still woman, but a gathering of women. Her dark red hair was parted in the middle and drawn back to her ears, though a dozen little ringlets escaped to make a frame for her pale face, and she was looking at me with two calm, violet eyes and a child's mouth that seemed almost obdurately soft, obdurately the Cupid's bow, unsullied by paint or personality, and the mouth smiled now and said, as those eyes seemed to fire, "Yes, he's as you said he would be, and I love him already. He's as you said." She rose now, gently lifting that abundance of dark taffeta, and the three small mirrors emptied at once. And utterly baffled and almost incapable of speech, I turned to see Claudia, far off on the immense bed, her small face rigidly calm, though she clung to the silk curtain with a tight fist. "Madeline," she said under her breath, "Louis is shy." And she watched with cold eyes, as Madeline only smiled when she said this, and, drawing closer to me, put both of her hands to the lace fringe around her throat, moving it back so I could see the two small marks there. Then the smile died on her lips, and they became at once sullen and sensual as her eyes narrowed, and she breathed the word, "Drink." I turned away from her, my fist rising in a consternation for which I couldn't find words. But then Claudia had hold of that fist and was looking up at me with relentless eyes. "Do it, Louis," she commanded, "because I cannot do it." Her voice was painfully calm, all the emotion under the hard, measured tone. "I haven't the size, I haven't the strength. You saw to that when you made me. Do it." I broke away from her, clutching my wrist as if she'd burned it. I could see the door, and it seemed to me the better part of wisdom to leave by it at once. I could feel Claudia's strength, her will, and the mortal woman's eyes seemed afire with that same will. But Claudia held me, not with a gentle pleading, a miserable coaxing that would have dissipated that power, making me feel pity for her as I gathered my own forces. She held me with the emotion. Her eyes had evinced, even through her coldness and the way that she turned away from me now, almost as if she'd been instantly defeated. I did not understand the manner in which she sank back on the bed, her head bowed, her lips moving feverishly, her eyes rising only to scan the walls. I wanted to touch her and say to her that what she asked was impossible. I wanted to soothe that fire that seemed to be consuming her from within. And the soft, mortal woman had settled into one of the velvet chairs by the fire, with the rustling and iridescence of her taffeta dress surrounding her like part of the mystery of her dispassionate eyes which watched us now, the fever of her pale face. I remember turning to her, spurred on by that childish, pouting mouth set against the fragile face. The vampire kiss had left no visible trace except the wound, no inalterable change on the pale pink flesh. "How do we appear to you?" I asked, seeing her eyes on Claudia. She seemed excited by the diminutive beauty, the awful woman's passion knotted in the small, dimpled hands. She broke her gaze and looked up at me. "I ask you, how do we appear? Do you think us beautiful, magical, our white skin, our fierce eyes?" Oh, I remember perfectly what mortal vision was, the dimness of it, and how the vampire's beauty burned through that veil, so powerfully alluring, so utterly deceiving. Drink, you tell me? You haven't the vaguest conception under God of what you ask. But Claudia rose from the bed and came towards me. How dare you, she whispered. How dare you make this decision for both of us? Do you know how I despise you? Do you know that I despise you with a passion that eats at me like a canker? Her small form trembled, her hands hovering over the pleated bodice of her yellow gown. Don't you look away from me. I am sick at heart with your looking away, with your suffering. You understand nothing. Your evil is that you cannot be evil, and I must suffer for it. I tell you, I will suffer no longer. Her fingers bit into the flesh of my wrist. I twisted, stepping back from her, floundering in the face of the hatred, the rage rising like some dormant beast in her, looking out through her eyes. Snatching me from mortal hands, like two grim monsters in a nightmare fairy tale, you idle, blind parents, fathers. She spat the word. Let tears gather in your eyes. You haven't tears enough for what you've done to me. 6 more mortal years, 7, 8, I might have had that shape. Her pointed finger flew at Madeleine, whose hands had risen to her face, whose eyes were clouded over. Her moan was almost Claudia's name, but Claudia did not hear her. Yes, that shape. I might have known what it was to walk at your side. Monsters, to give me immortality in this hopeless guise, this helpless form. The tears stood in her eyes. The words had died away, drawn in, as it were, on her breast. Now, you give her to me, she said, her head bowing, her curls tumbling down to make a concealing veil. You give her to me. You do this, or you finish what you did to me that night in the hotel in New Orleans. I will not live with this hatred any longer. I will not live with this rage. I cannot. I will not abide it. And tossing her hair, she put her hands to her ears, as if to stop the sound of her own words, her breath drawn in rapid gasps, the tears seeming to scald her cheeks. I had sunk to my knees at her side, and my arms were outstretched as if to enfold her, yet I dared not touch her, dared not even say her name, lest my own pain break from me with the first syllable in a monstrous outpouring of hopelessly inarticulate cries. Oh, she shook her head now, squeezing the tears out onto her cheeks, her teeth clenched tight together. I love you still, that's the torment of it. Lista I never loved, but you, the measure of my hatred is that love. They are the same. Do you know now how much I hate you? She flashed at me through the red film that covered her eyes. Yes, I whispered. I bowed my head. But she was gone from me into the arms of Madeleine, who enfolded her desperately, as if she might protect Claudia from me. The irony of it, the pathetic irony, protect Claudia from herself. She was whispering to Claudia, "Don't cry, don't cry." Her hands stroking Claudia's face and hair with a fierceness that would have bruised a human child. But Claudia seemed lost against her breast suddenly, her eyes closed, her face smooth, as if all passion were drained away from her, her arm sliding up around Madeleine's neck, her head falling against the taffeta and lace. She lay still, the tears staining her cheeks, as if all this that had risen to the surface had left her weak and desperate for oblivion, as if the room around her, as if I were not there. And there they were together, a tender mortal, crying unstintingly now, her warm arms holding what she could not possibly understand, this white and fierce and unnatural child thing she believed she loved. And if I had not felt for her, this mad and reckless woman flirting with the damned, if I had not felt all the sorrow for her I felt for my mortal self, I would have wrested the demon thing from her arms, held it tight to me, denying over and over the words I just heard. But I knelt there still, thinking only, the love is equal to the hatred, gathering that selfishly to my own breast, holding on to that as I sank back against the bed. A long time before Madeleine was to know it, Claudia had ceased crying and sat still as a statue on Madeleine's lap, her liquid eyes fixed on me, oblivious to the soft red hair that fell around her or the woman's hand that still stroked her. And I sat slumped against the bedpost, staring back at those vampire eyes, unable and unwilling to speak in my defense. Madeleine was whispering into Claudia's ear. She was letting her tears fall into Claudia's tresses. And then gently, Claudia said to her, "Leave us." "No," she shook her head, holding tight to Claudia, and then she shut her eyes and trembled all over with some terrible vexation, some awful torment. But Claudia was leading her from the chair, and she was now pliant and shocked and white-faced, the green taffeta ballooning around the small, yellow silk dress. In the archway of the parlor, they stopped, and Madeleine stood as if confused, her hand at her throat, beating like a wing, then going still. She looked about her like that hapless victim on the stage of the Théâtre des Vampires, who did not know where she was. But Claudia had gone for something, and I saw her emerge from the shadows with what appeared to be a large doll. I rose on my knees to look at it. It was a doll, the doll of a little girl with raven hair and green eyes, adorned with lace and ribbons, sweet-faced and wide-eyed, its porcelain feet tinkling as Claudia put it into Madeleine's arms, and Madeleine's eyes appeared to harden as she held the doll, and her lips drew back from her teeth in a grimace as she stroked its hair. She was laughing low under her breath. "Lie down," Claudia said to her, and together they appeared to sink into the cushions of the couch, the green taffeta rustling and giving way, as Claudia lay with her and put her arms around her neck. I saw the doll sliding, dropping to the floor, yet Madeleine's hand groped for it and held it dangling, her own head thrown back, her eyes shut tight, and Claudia's curls stroking her face. I settled back on the floor and leaned against the soft siding of the bed. Claudia was speaking now in a low voice, barely above a whisper, telling Madeleine to be patient, to be still. I dreaded the sound of her step on the carpet, the sound of the doors sliding closed, to shut Madeleine away from us, and the hatred that lay between us like a killing vapor. But when I looked up to her, Claudia was standing there, as if transfixed and lost in thought, all rancor and bitterness gone from her face, so that she had the blank expression of that doll. "All you've said to me is true," I said to her. "I deserve your hatred. I've deserved it from those first moments when Lestat put you in my arms." She seemed unaware of me, and her eyes were infused with a soft light. Her beauty burned into my soul so that I could hardly stand it, and then she said, wondering, "You could have killed me then, despite him? You could have done it." Then her eyes rested on me calmly. "Do you wish to do it now?" "Do it now?" I put my arm around her, moved her close to me, warmed by her softened voice. Are you mad to say such things to me? Do I want to do it now? I want you to do it, she said. Bend down now, as you did then. Draw the blood out of me drop by drop, all you have the strength for. Push my heart to the brink. I am small. You can take me. I won't resist you. I am something frail you can crush like a flower. You mean these things? You mean what you say to me? I asked. Why don't you place the knife here? Why don't you turn it? Would you die with me? She asked, with a sly, mocking smile. Would you, in fact, die with me? She pressed. Don't you understand what is happening to me? That he's killing me, that master vampire who has you in thrall. That he won't share your love with me, not a drop of it. I see his power in your eyes. I see your misery, your distress, the love for him you can't hide. Turn around. I'll make you look at me with those eyes that want him. I'll make you listen. Don't anymore. Don't. I won't leave you. I've sworn to you. Don't you see? I cannot give you that woman. But I'm fighting for my life. Give her to me so she can care for me. Complete the guise I must have to live, and he can have you then. I am fighting for my life. I all but shoved her off. No, it's madness, it's witchery, I said, trying to defy her. It's you who will not share me with him. It's you who want every drop of that love, if not from me, from her. He overpowers you, he disregards you, and it's you who wish him dead the way that you killed Lestat. Well, you won't make me a party to this death. I tell you, not this death. I will not make her one of us. I will not damn the legions of mortals who'll die at her hands if I do. Your power over me is broken. I will not. Oh, if she could only have understood. Not for a moment could I truly believe her words against Armand, that out of that detachment, which was beyond revenge, he could selfishly wish for her death. But that was nothing to me now. Something far more terrible than I could grasp was happening, something I was only beginning to understand, against which my anger was nothing but a mockery, a hollow attempt to oppose her tenacious will. She hated me, she loathed me, as she herself had confessed, and my heart shriveled inside me, as if, in depriving me of that love which had sustained me a lifetime, she had dealt me a mortal blow. The knife was there. I was dying for her, dying for that love as I was, that very first night when Lestat gave her to me, turned her eyes to me, and told her my name. That love which had warmed me in my self-hatred allowed me to exist. Oh, how Lestat had understood it, and now at last his plan was undone. But it went beyond that, in some region from which I was shrinking, as I strode back and forth, my hands opening and closing at my sides, feeling not only that hatred in her liquid eyes. It was her pain. She had shown me her pain to give me immortality in this hopeless guise, this helpless form. I put my hands to my ears, as if she spoke the words yet, and the tears flowed. For all these years I had depended utterly upon her cruelty, her absolute lack of pain. And pain was what she showed to me, undeniable pain. Oh, how Lestat would have laughed at us. That was why she'd put the knife to him, because he would have laughed. To destroy me utterly, she need only show me that pain. The child I made a vampire suffered. Her agony was as my own. There was a coffin in that other room, a bed for Madeleine, to which Claudia retreated to leave me alone with what I could not abide. I welcomed the silence, and sometime during the few hours that remained of the night, I found myself at the open window, feeling the slow mist of the rain. It glistened on the fronds of the ferns, on sweet white flowers that listed, bowed, and finally broke from their stems. A carpet of flowers littering the little balcony, the petals pounded softly by the rain. I felt weak now, and utterly alone. What had passed between us tonight could never be undone, and what had been done to Claudia by me could never be undone. But I was somehow, to my own bewilderment, empty of all regret. Perhaps it was the night, the starless sky, the gas lamps frozen in the mist that gave some strange comfort, for which I never asked and didn't know how, in this emptiness and aloneness, to receive. I am alone, I was thinking. I am alone, I am alone. It seemed just perfectly, and so to have a pleasing, inevitable form. And I pictured myself then forever alone, as if on gaining that vampire strength the night of my death I had left Lestat, and never looked back for him, as if I had moved on away from him, beyond the need of him and anyone else, as if the night had said to me, "You are the night, and the night alone understands you and enfolds you in its arms, one with the shadows, without nightmare, an inexplicable peace." Yet I could feel the end of this peace as surely as I'd felt my brief surrender to it, and it was breaking like the dark clouds. The urgent pain of Claudia's loss pressed in on me, behind me, like a shape gathered from the corners of this cluttered and oddly alien room. But outside, even as the night seemed to dissolve in a fierce driving wind, I could feel something calling to me, something inanimate, which I had never known, and a power within me seemed to answer that power, not with resistance, but with an inscrutable, chilling strength. I moved silently through the rooms, gently dividing the doors until I saw, in the dim light cast by the flickering gas flames behind me, that sleeping woman lying in my shadow on the couch, the doll limp against her breast. Some time before I knelt at her side, I saw her eyes open, and I could feel beyond her, in the collected dark, those other eyes watching me, that breathless, tiny vampire face waiting. "Will you care for her, Madeleine?" I saw her hands clutch at the doll, turning its face against her breast, and my own hand went out for it, though I did not know why, even as she was answering me. "Yes," she repeated it again, desperately. "Is this what you believe her to be, a doll?" I asked her, my hand closing on the doll's head, only to feel her snatch it away from me, see her teeth clenched as she glared at me. "A child who can't die, that's what she is," she said, as if she were pronouncing a curse. "Ah," I whispered. "I've done with dolls," she said, shoving it away from her into the cushions of the couch. She was fumbling with something on her breast, something she wanted me to see and not to see, her fingers catching hold of it and closing over it. I knew what it was, had noticed it before. A locket fixed with a gold pin. I wish I could describe the passion that infected her round features, how her soft baby mouth was distorted. And the child who did die? I guessed, watching her. I was picturing a doll shop, dolls with the same face. She shook her head, her hand pulling hard on the locket, so the pin ripped the taffeta. It was fear I saw in her now, a consuming panic, and her hand bled as she opened it from the broken pin. I took the locket from her fingers. "My daughter," she whispered, her lip trembling. It was a doll's face on the small fragment of porcelain. Claudia's face, a baby face, a saccharine, sweet mockery of innocence an artist had painted there. A child with raven hair like the doll, and the mother, terrified, was staring at the darkness in front of her. "Grief," I said gently. "I've done with grief," she said, her eyes narrowing as she looked up at me. "If you knew how I long to have your power, I'm ready for it. I hunger for it." And she turned to me, breathing deeply, so that her breast seemed to swell under her dress. A violent frustration rent her face then. She turned away from me, shaking her head, her curls. "If you were a mortal man and monster," she said angrily, "if I could only show you my power," and she smiled malignantly, defiantly at me, "I could make you want me, desire me, but you're unnatural." Her mouth went down at the corners. "What can I give you? What can I do to make you give me what you have?" Her hand hovered over her breasts, seeming to caress them like a man's hand. It was strange, that moment. Strange because I could never have predicted the feeling her words incited in me, the way that I saw her now, with that small, enticing waist, saw the round, plump curve of her breasts, and those delicate, pouting lips. She never dreamed what the mortal man in me was, how tormented I was by the blood I'd only just drunk. Desire her I did, more than she knew, because she didn't understand the nature of the kill, and with a man's pride, I wanted to prove that to her, to humiliate her for what she had said to me, for the cheap vanity of her provocation, and the eyes that looked away from me now in disgust. But this was madness. These were not the reasons to grant eternal life. And cruelly, surely, I said to her, "Did you love this child?" I will never forget her face then, the violence in her, the absolute hatred. "Yes," she all but hissed the words at me. "How dare you?" She reached for the locket even as I clutched it. It was guilt that was consuming her, not love. It was guilt. That shop of dolls Claudia had described to me, shelves and shelves of the effigy of that dead child, but guilt that absolutely understood the finality of death. There was something as hard in her as the evil in myself, something as powerful. She had her hand out towards me. She touched my waistcoat and opened her fingers there, pressing them against my chest, and I was on my knees, drawing close to her, her hair brushing my face. "Hold fast to me when I take you," I said to her, seeing her eyes grow wide, her mouth open. "And when the swoon is strongest, listen all the harder for the beating of my heart. Hold and say over and over, 'I will live.'" "Yes, yes." She was nodding, her heart pounding with her excitement. Her hands burned on my neck, fingers forcing their way into my collar. "Look beyond me at that distant light. Don't take your eyes off of it, not for a second, and say over and over, 'I will live.'" She gasped as I broke the flesh, the warm current coming into me, her breasts crushed against me, her body arching up, helpless, from the couch, and I could see her eyes even as I shut my own, see that taunting, provocative mouth. I was drawing on her, hard, lifting her, and I could feel her weakening, her hands dropping limp at her sides. "Tight, tight," I whispered over the hot stream of her blood, her heart thundering in my ears, her blood swelling my satiated veins. "The lamp," I whispered. "Look at it." Her heart was slowing, stopping, and her head dropped back from me on the velvet, her eyes dull to the point of death. It seemed for a moment I couldn't move, yet I knew I had to, that someone else was lifting my wrist to my mouth as the room turned round and round, that I was focusing on that light, as I had told her to do, as I tasted my own blood from my own wrist, and then forced it into her mouth. "Drink it, drink," I said to her, but she lay as if dead. I gathered her close to me, the blood pouring over her lips. Then she opened her eyes, and I felt the gentle pressure of her mouth, and then her hands closing tight on the arm as she began to suck. I was rocking her, whispering to her, trying desperately to break my swoon, and then I felt her powerful pull. Every blood vessel felt it. I was threaded through and through with her pulling, my hand holding fast to the couch now, her heart beating fierce against my heart, her fingers digging deep into my arm, my outstretched palm. It was cutting me, scoring me, so I all but cried out as it went on, and I was backing away from her, yet pulling her with me, my life passing through my arm, her moaning breath in time with her pulling, and those strings, which were my veins, those searing wires, pulled at my very heart, harder and harder, until, without will or direction, I had wrenched free of her and fallen away from her, clutching that bleeding wrist tight with my own hand. She was staring at me, the blood staining her open mouth. An eternity seemed to pass as she stared. She doubled and tripled in my blurred vision, then collapsed into one trembling shape. Her hand moved to her mouth, yet her eyes did not move, but grew large in her face as she stared. And then she rose slowly, not as if by her own power, but as if lifted from the couch bodily by some invisible force which held her now, staring as she turned round and round, her massive skirt moving stiff, as if she were all of a piece, turning like some great carved ornament on a music box that dances helplessly round and round to the music. And suddenly she was staring down at the taffeta, grabbing hold of it, pressing it between her fingers, so it zinged and rustled, and she let it fall, quickly covering her ears. Her eyes shut tight, then opened wide again. And then it seemed she saw the lamp, the distant, low-gas lamp of the other room, that gave a fragile light through the double doors, and she ran to it and stood beside it, watching it as if it were alive. "Don't touch it," Claudia said to her and gently guided her away. But Madeleine had seen the flowers on the balcony, and she was drawing close to them now, her outstretched palms brushing the petals, and then pressing the droplets of rain to her face. I was hovering on the fringes of the room, watching her every move, how she took the flowers and crushed them in her hands and let the petals fall all around her, and how she pressed her fingertips to the mirror and stared into her own eyes. My own pain had ceased. A handkerchief bound the wound, and I was waiting, seeing now that Claudia had no knowledge from memory of what was to come next. They were dancing together as Madeleine's skin grew paler and paler in the unsteady golden light. She scooped Claudia into her arms, and Claudia rode round in circles with her, her own small face alert and wary behind her smile. And then Madeleine weakened. She stepped backwards and seemed to lose her balance, but quickly she righted herself and let Claudia go gently down to the ground. On tiptoe, Claudia embraced her. Louis, she signaled to me under her breath. Louis. I beckoned for her to come away, and Madeline, not seeming even to see us, was staring at her own outstretched hands. Her face was blanched and drawn, and suddenly she was scratching at her lips and staring at the dark stains on her fingertips. No, no, I cautioned her gently, taking Claudia's hand and holding her close to my side. A long moan escaped Madeline's lips. Louis, Claudia whispered in that preternatural voice which Madeleine could not yet hear. She is dying, which your child's mind can't remember. You were spared it. It left no mark on you, I whispered to her, brushing the hair back from her ear, my eyes never leaving Madeleine, who was wandering from mirror to mirror, the tears flowing freely now, the body giving up its life. But Louis, if she dies, Claudia cried. No, I knelt down, seeing the distress in her small face. The blood was strong enough, she will live, but she will be afraid, terribly afraid. And gently, firmly, I pressed Claudia's hand and kissed her cheek. She looked at me then with mingled wonder and fear, and she watched me with that same expression as I wandered closer to Madeleine, drawn by her cries. She reeled now, her hands out, and I caught her and held her close. Her eyes already burned with unnatural light, a violet fire reflected in her tears. It's mortal death, only mortal death, I said to her gently. Do you see the sky? We must leave it now, and you must hold tight to me, lie by my side. A sleep as heavy as death will come over my limbs, and I won't be able to solace you. And you will lie there, and you will struggle with it. But you hold tight to me in the darkness. Do you hear? You hold tight to my hands, which will hold your hands as long as I have feeling. She seemed lost for the moment in my gaze, and I sensed the wonder that surrounded her, how the radiance of my eyes was the radiance of all colors, and how all those colors were all the more reflected for her in my eyes. I guided her gently to the coffin, telling her again not to be afraid. When you arise, you will be immortal, I said. No natural cause of death can harm you. Come, lie down. I could see her fear of it, see her shrink from the narrow box. It sat in no comfort. Already her skin began to glisten, to have that brilliance that Claudia and I shared. I knew now she would not surrender until I lay with her. I held her and looked across the long vista of the room to where Claudia stood with that strange coffin, watching me. Her eyes were still but dark, with an undefined suspicion, a cool distrust. I set Madeleine down beside her bed and moved towards those eyes, and kneeling calmly beside her, I gathered Claudia in my arms. Don't you recognize me? I asked her. Don't you know who I am? She looked at me. No, she said. I smiled. I nodded. Bear me no ill will, I said. We are even. At that, she moved her head to one side and studied me carefully, then seemed to smile despite herself and to nod in assent. For you see, I said to her in that same calm voice, what died tonight in this room was not that woman. It will take her many nights to die, perhaps years. What has died in this room tonight is the last vestige in me of what was human. A shadow fell over her face, clear as if the composure were rent like a veil, and her lips as parted, but only with a short intake of breath. Then she said, "Well, then you are right, indeed. We are even." And this is where we pause our tale. Thank you for letting me be a part of your journey to the land of sleep. If you've enjoyed our time together, countless other journeys await in previous episodes, ready to accompany you into the realm of dreams. So, as we close the book on our story this evening, I wish you a night filled with serene dreams and restful sleep. Good night, until we meet again in another tale. Rest well.